So my name's Kendall Miyakawa. I am currently a software engineer at Olio. I went to Taylor University in 2017, graduated in 2021 with a computer science degree. However, I did not go into college with computer science in mind. So I was a math major originally, but then I took a programming class the spring semester of my freshman year. While everyone else in the class was saying, this is horrible, I thought this is kind of cool. So I see a future for myself in this field, so I switched into that, and then I haven't looked back since. I think growing up, I didn't really know what programming was, probably compared to most of my contemporaries. And I knew people at my school that did it, but I didn't really run in the same circles as them, so I wasn't really sure what to think about it. Then in college, when I was not forced, but had an opportunity to learn it for part of the major that I was in, I realized the type of thinking that it involves, just problem solving in general, and then thinking logically and more like a computer than like a emotional human. I realized that I had a aptitude for that not everyone else did. So I realized I really like solving these problems, and I can see enjoying a job where I get paid to do that in some shape or form most of the time. And I saw a lot of practical value in that over, at the time, just seeing myself doing math theory or math research or being a math teacher. There was some appeal to those, but I also wasn't really sure if that was going to be what I was going to do long term. And when I decided I didn't want to do research, people asked me like, well, what do you want to do with the math degree? And I said, oh, I'll probably study computer science or something in grad school. And then I was like, why don't I just do that now? So currently I work at Olio. Technically it's Olio Health, but I think we just say Olio. And as a software engineer at Olio, I essentially am doing full stack work, both in the front end and the back end. We're a pretty small product so far, so we don't have a huge complexity of different types of things happening behind the scenes. We're still kind of working on expanding our MVP, minimum viable product, to something that kind of translates and is helpful to people across the industry. The industry that we're in is post-acute healthcare. So essentially when hospitals discharge their patients to receive special care at a rehab facility or any nursing facility or any type of care that is needed after an initial hospital stay, that is where Olio comes into play. It's a tracking system essentially for those patients between those facilities, so they can see at any point in time that patient is either in the queue to be admitted to that facility, they are in admission but not actually admitted yet, they are receiving treatment, or they are discharged either to home or to another facility. And so it's not only useful for just tracking patients, but it's also useful for communicating between the post-acute facilities and the acute facilities, such as the hospital that sent them there, as well as the healthcare plan, the people that are actually paying for it, physician groups, any other type of stakeholders that might be invested in how the patient is doing, where they're at, and if anything needs special attention. So Olio kind of brings all of that together. So as a software engineer behind that product, I'm on a team of about 9 or 10 engineers, and we do full stack work right now. We're at the point where we're just small enough that we don't really need to specialize into anything more specific than that. So full stack meaning I'm doing both work in the front end. That's going to be doing JavaScript-based work. So we use React as our JavaScript framework. And so far, any type of work I'm doing is either tweaking the React that's already been written to extend its functionality, or adding something new into React components, maybe adding some automated front-end tests for those components using something like Cypress or Mocha. So that's the front-end stuff. And then the back-end, our API is written in Ruby on Rails. So anytime I'm doing work there, it's probably adding some type of functionality to something that already exists, or tweaking a little bit to use a new database table that we've created, or maybe bring together a couple tables that weren't connected before. And typically the front end and the back end work is going to be done, pretty linked together. Oftentimes, if we make a change in the back end, it's directly because we need some type of new information available via the back end for the front end to use. And so those things are being done in parallel, which is why we kind of do all of it at the same time. I know at bigger tech companies where there's a lot of complexity just inside of the front end that's separate from the back end, you have more distinct teams that are like back end team and front end team, and there's a lot of planning that goes into how they work together. But at Olio, we're small and fast, and so we do everything, and we keep the knowledge all within the team, and it kind of forces collaboration in that way, because if you make a change on the front end, you have to know why you're doing that and what needs to be done on the back end to make that work. So I would say the most valuable experience I had in my education that kind of got me here was honestly taking harder classes through my computer science degree. I took a lot of lower level programming classes, such as computer systems, computer architecture, operating systems. And although those classes aren't really directly relevant to full stack software, web development, engineering that I'm doing now, I would say that those classes really taught me to ask the deeper why of why is it the system that's in place, like how does it actually work underneath the hood, as they say. What are the things that are actually happening inside of this one thing? I think oftentimes there's a temptation as a web developer to not really dig into the deeper mechanisms of something, because it doesn't necessarily, it's not always super obvious how that might help. But in terms of making scalable technology, especially web applications, it is really important how things are actually working behind the scenes, because if you understand that part, you can make educated decisions on how to make something a little bit faster, or why something works really well when only one person is using it, but when thousands of people are using it, it gets really slow. Those type of questions you're not really equipped to answer unless you have learned the skill of digging into how something is really working underneath the layer that you're interacting with. So I would say, to kind of recap that, in my education experience, the deeper and lower level classes that I took really gave me that skill. But I will say, regardless of that, I don't think that a 4-year degree in computer science is necessary at all to be a really successful software engineer. I think that might have used to be true, but pretty much everyone I worked with on my team came out of a different profession originally, and they did a coding boot camp that was either 6 months, a year, 18 months, and that gave them the necessary skills they need in the web development space to do the job really well. So while I value the harder classes that I took, I don't think that they are necessary to be a successful engineer. I would say my aspirations and goals fall more around bridging the gap between the technical work and people. So the reason I say that, as someone that didn't grow up programming a lot, I kind of discovered it late in life, I guess you could say. And I've always been a really social person, and I loved interacting with a lot of people and bringing them together. So I really see a path for myself in kind of that in-between spot between all the technical engineering work that's happening and then the bigger vision of the product and how people are working on it. So some would say that that's a product manager or project manager, but I was talking to someone recently who is both the CTO and the product manager, or a product manager at his small startup, and he said, I think that there is a missing job in the market for someone that's bridging that gap between people and product and project a little bit more specifically. So I'm interested in that idea, and I don't know if the job that I see for myself really even exists yet. It would have to exist at a specific company, or if it can be found across a lot of tech companies. So I'm not really sure. But I would say, to summarize that, right now I see myself continuing to strengthen my skills as a developer, but eventually pivot into more of a role where I'm kind of bringing together the details and the weeds with the aerial view of where we're going as a product. The advice I would give someone who is just getting started in their tech career, I think there's a lot of fear going into a technical career for the first time. There's a lot of imposter syndrome, feeling like all these people around me know all this stuff that I don't. And I see that in new people on my team. And I usually take it upon myself to try to demystify those things for them, because not too long ago I was in their shoes as well, and I was entering a new company or a new team, and there were things that I would never have known unless someone had told me. So I'd say the biggest thing is, if you're starting a career in tech and you feel overwhelmed, outnumbered, or like an imposter, you're not alone, and everyone else that you're looking at that you feel like is better than you had to go through the exact same thing that you did, and they're actually there to help you. They're not there to make you feel like you don't know anything. So have patience for yourself and know that anyone can do programming. Not everyone has the patience for programming, but I think anyone can do it given the right time and mentorship and just digging into asking those questions more. So